You know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese in Paris?
They don't call it a quarter pounder with cheese?
Oh man, they got the metric system. They wouldn't know what the fuck a quarter pounder is.
Stay tuned for tonight's adventure with the Fat Man.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whatever time of day it is, I hope it's good to be where you are, because I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and today we're going metric. Yeah, okay guys, have fun. All right, so today we're going with Alexander Dallas Bache and the system of weights and measures, and what part either he or they could play in the New World Order, if any. You know, I don't know. We're going to find out, I guess. Right? And so picking up here, it says that in May 1833, which is, beyond the obvious. It's a really amazing year, and we're going to get deeper into it as we go with this. Right? But a bill was introduced into the legislature of Pennsylvania establishing and regulating the standard of weights and measures, then not fixed by the federal government. The House of Representatives referred the bill to the Franklin Institute for their opinion. And so now, just to refresh our memories on the Franklin Institute, it was started in 1824 in honor of Alexander Bache's great-grandfather, Benny Franklin. Right, founded in 1824. It is one of the oldest centers of science education and development in the United States. All right, it was founded as the Institute of the State of Pennsylvania for the Promotion of the Mechanic Arts, with a view further to develop the resources of the Union, increase the national independence, call forth the ingenuity and industry of the people, and thereby increase the comforts of the community at large. That's their mission statement from their opening day ceremonies. Starting the next year in 1825, the Institute was an important force in the professionalization of American science and technology through the 19th century. Taking it out of the hands of the rank amateurs of the already intellectually elite, right? Because that's the only people who are practicing science and technology. I mean, let's be honest here. And so here they're making an impression of finding a way to line their pockets with their hobby, right? Beginning with the early investigations into steam engines and water power. Now, this is also an important part of Alexander Bache's work, but he is very involved in steam power at this time, Alexander Bache was. In addition to conducting scientific inquiry, it fostered research and education by running schools, publishing the influential Journal of the Franklin Institute, sponsoring exhibitions, and recognizing scientific advancement and invention with medals and awards. Yeah, that we see that all the time with these societies. They have to honor each other. And this is something that continues over into the arts. That goes to today. Almost every form of the arts has some form of award, be it the Oscar or the Tony or the Grammy or whatever. And so the Franklin Institute is your preeminent institute for your scientific needs. You go to them, right, at the time. And that's what the state of Pennsylvania did in regards to creating a standard of weights and measures. Other than learning them in school and stuff, I don't think anybody ever really gives any thought to weights and measures. I mean, it's just part of our lives. It's something that seems instinctual and reactive. I mean, you just know what a foot is, an inch, a yard, and so forth, right? And I don't think that people really put into perspective, how important these weights and measures are in defining our realm, and if you can control the concepts of what weight and measures are, well, then you kind of control the world, don't you? Right? And that's, really kind of taking it out, All right. And so in May of 1833, as we said, and so looking to create this standard of weights and measures, the Institute, taking this task very seriously, creates a special committee of 19, of which they wisely appoint Mr. Bache the chairman. And with a committee of smart guys, you want the smartest guy as your chairman, right? And the report was prepared by him, as well as a special analysis of the various reports previously made on the weights and measures in the United States. This report is worthy of especial note, since it doubtless contributed to hasten that desirable consummation, the establishment by Congress of a uniform standard of weights and measures for which the power had been expressly delegated by the Constitution. And so it was Bache's report and the adoption of his weight and measure system in Pennsylvania that spurred Congress on to do the thing that the Constitution has expressly delegated the government to do. But this is 1833, so we're looking at like some 50 years after the Constitution. And so, isn't the Constitution 1776? Is this like 52 years after the Constitution? It took this report and Alexander Bache in the state of Pennsylvania to create this system of weights and measures for the federal government to do the job the Constitution told it to do. Hey, that's government work for you right there. Hey, it says that all right, so the report says, so impressed are the committee with this view that they would express it as their decided opinion that the most imperfect system of weights and measures which has ever been framed would, if applied in all the states of our union, be preferable to the most perfect system which should be adopted by any one commonwealth singly. So what they're saying is that it's better to have a crappy system of weights and measures than a really good one adopted individually by a state. And so what's really happening here by creating this universal system of weights and measures is they are limiting the sovereignty of the states, right? Because up until this point, the states could issue their own currency. And what they use to back their currency, I guess, would vary, and the weight of their coin, like say a Maryland coin would be different than a Connecticut coin, which would be different than a New York coin and so forth. Perhaps, different weights of silver and so forth go into the coins and what their paper notes would be backed by and who knows, right? But that's what's kind of happening here, right? They're trying to eliminate the financial sovereignty of the states. Indeed, in most of the laws of more recent origin adopted by the several states, there is a distinct provision that when Congress shall furnish a system of weights and measures for the United States, the temporary state standards shall be made to conform to the national standard. The exceeding importance of uniformity is thus distinctly set forth from quarters of the highest authority in the different parts of our extended republic. Right? I don't see how it can be read any other way. The states had the right and the ability to make their own currency, and then the federal government goes ahead and passes this standard of weights and measures, which the other states are forced to adopt to by the Constitution. All right, so the report, which was signed by all the members of the committee, all 19 of them, right, and unanimously adopted by the Board of Managers of the Institute, concluded by recommending that independent action on the part of the state be suspended for a season, but that the attention of Congress be especially called to the importance of fixing the standard of weights and measures. And so, no, I guess Pennsylvania never did adopt this, and that the Franklin Institute and Alexander Bache just punted this thing directly to Congress. It was so good. All right, their system was so good that this is the one that the U.S. needs to go with. All these other state systems suck. Before long, Congress had taken the much-needed action and established uniform national standards, probably the best attainable without the introduction of new names and ideas. So they really just kind of reworked things with the same names to keep it simple. Right? And before the expiration of a single decade from the date of this report, Mr. Bache himself occupied the position of superintendent of weights and measures for the United States. Put himself right in charge. Right? And again, this just speaks to the prestige, the influence, the power that the professor, Mr. Bache, had. Right? All right, so now this next paragraph is when the story gets really interesting. And it says, like the great body of scientific investigators throughout the world, he felt the convenience and many advantages of the metric system, and fervently looked forward to the time when that uniformity, for which the individual states of America and continental Europe were then earnestly striving, should find its application on a grander scale, and when all civilized nations, scorning the prejudices which rivers, oceans, or mountains might hem in, should join in one measure, one weight, and one coin. One coin. Universal money. That's what's happening here with the weights and measures. And that perhaps the adoption of this universal system of weights is a way to hide the fact that there isn't sovereign money. That money isn't independently sovereign in any way, shape, or form. Right? Because let's take a real quick look at the metric system. Okay, so it helps to have your windows brought up, right? So here we go with the metric system. And now I'm not going to go in depth on what the metric system is, because I think we all have an understanding of it, but just real quick. The metric system is a system of measurement that was developed in France in the 1790s based off the meter. And now this system of measurement was so perfect that it led to something called metrification. Right? And so metrification is the act or process of converting to a metric system of measurement. All over the world, nations have transitioned from their local and traditional units of measurement to the metric system. All over the world. And to demonstrate that, I have this map. What this map is it shows the worldwide use of the metric system. And all but 4 territories have adopted the metric system. Now, I don't know if this whole idea of like the one world government, the new world order, and so much talk in the like truther in quotes community about how it's been a new world order, it's been a one world government forever. Right? And and I think here we can see some actual sign of that. I mean, look how much of the world is converted to the metric system. Here it lists the United States as imperial, as the red. And of course, that's interesting because, the imperial system was the one that was in use in England and was brought over to America during the colonization era. And so it just says to me that Bache's system is really nothing more than an Americanized version of the imperial system. So the 3 countries that are under this imperial system are America, right? Over here, this is Myanmar. Myanmar? All right, so of the 4 nations that do not participate in the metric system, we have Myanmar here, which is kind of interesting, this Southeast Asian territory. I don't know anything about Myanmar, so maybe a side episode on that, or I have to do some independent looking into that. And so up here we have in green, England. And it says here that England has a crazy fucked up system where they call themselves metric, but actually use a mix of both and still harass Americans for using the imperial system. I think that's genius. Right? Okay. And so moving on, we have America, of course, right? Still using that imperial system. And then over here in Africa, this is Liberia. And now that's really interesting to me because I don't know if you guys remember, but back, I think it was in the there's more than one way to train an orphan video I did like 2 years ago already. I talked about how Liberia was set up as a colony of Maryland, right? And now this is where they sent like freed slaves, right? And it was founded in 1821 to 22. And now the really interesting thing about this to me is that it indicates to me that perhaps there is still some form of proprietorship still happening here in Maryland. It is still somehow independent enough to create its own colony. And now I don't know off the top of my head if there were other states that did this. Something's telling me that maybe there were. But certainly Maryland set up Liberia. And so it's interesting to me that they would be one of the essentially 3 places that haven't adopted the metric system, because technically England really has. They just really don't use it so much over there, I guess. And so, again, to me, this is really kind of fascinating because, again, if you're kind of looking to establish the concept of a one world government or a new world order, the metric system kind of shows that that's already here. He who controls the metric system controls the universe. Right? Okay, so let's see what else Benjamin Gould and Alexander Bache have to say about this before I close this one out. All right, so now Gould's pimping of the metric system here, where he talks about the great scientists how Bache agrees with the great scientists of the world that there needs to be this one measurement, this metric measurement, and this becomes really important considering what he says next here. And again, just one long sentence here. It's unbelievable. Right? Deeming this apparently far off, the universal adoption of the metric system, yet not impossible, attainment to be not merely an efficient source of immediate benefit, but also a great step toward hastening on that happy era, the happy era of the universal measurement system, which was sung by poets and foretold by prophets. When the war drum throbs no longer, and the battle flags are furled, in the Parliament of Man, the Federation of the World. The Federation of the World. One world. All right, now it says here that the only hindrance that Bache had in his immediate advocacy of the metric system arose from a fear that the nation was not yet ripe for it. Fruit metaphor. Hello, Bacchus. Right? That new names would alarm the illiterate. That the illiterate and the uneducated would not understand these change of names, right? And that premature efforts for its introduction might defeat their own end. That people would rebel against the introduction of this. So it needs to come out in a slow drip. right? Still, he retained the meter as the fundamental unit for all the measurements of the Coast Survey. So again, now we have to think about this. He creates this system for the United States to use, right? He and his committee of 19. But when he goes on to the Coast Survey, which is after this, I mean, this is 1833. He goes on to the Coast Survey in the 1840s. He's using the meter instead of his own system. What does that tell you? Right? And in all discussion and official action, whether in the United States Office of Weights and Measures, in his many relations to the mint, printing that money, or as chairman of the Committee upon Weights and Measures in this association and in the National Academy. I mean, he is the weights and measures guy. His policy always had reference to that desirable epoch, the desirable epoch of one weight and measure, which must surely come. It has to, when the metric system shall be thoroughly introduced into the United States. How would his heart have swelled with joy could he have foreseen that, even now, while I speak to you, this has been established as the standard of weights and measures for more than half and legally authorized for 2/3 of the population of continental Europe, adopted by 1/2 of that of South America, and that the United States have not only put on the same legal footing as the old systems, meaning that the metric system holds up in the court of law and on official government documents and things like that, but have introduced it into their domestic and foreign postal arrangements. They are issuing mentions and weight for the purpose of disseminating among our people an acquaintance with the system. Again, that slow rollout. It says that Russia has declared her readiness to follow. This is in the late 1860s, when the United States shall have also joined the long list of nations who have established it in good earnest. That China, let's not forget Baltimore and this whole story's connections to China that go far beyond the pandemic, at once and so China was at once the eldest and the youngest of the family of nations. And that China is on the eve of establishing the same standards. So there are empires falling like dominoes at the might of the metric system. And that even in conservative England, its use has been authorized by statutory enactment, so that the elegant and harmonious system of meters and grams now stands in the same legal category with avoirdupois, troy, and apothecary weights. And these are individual weights that were used in these sciences. I'm not going to go into it now, but also, of course, very important, right? It's got to line up with the beer measure and the wine measure, right? Cords, acres, stones, quarters of various sorts, and all other arbitrary and incongruous denominations, which nothing but hereditary acquisition could save from the verdict of utter absurdity. It all sounds utterly absurd, right? Divided too, as they are, into parts of 3, 4, 5.5, 6, 8, 12, 14, 16, 31.5, or whatever else they may be. Certainly not decimal. All right, so I'm not going to go any further than this, other than because I think my point has been made. But I do want to follow up with this, in that he says here that how would his heart have swelled with joy could he have foreseen that, even now while I speak to you, foreseen that even now. Now, he delivers this speech on August 6, 1868. Now, Alexander Bache, he dies February 17th, 1867. Right? I think it's interesting that this commemoration is taking place, a year and a half or so after his death. That's how long it took them to prepare for this. They were so unready, maybe. I don't know. But, so he died in 1867, yet he was the weights and measures guru. Absolutely 100% the weights and measures guru of the United States. He held the position within all the advanced scientific societies of the day for the United States government as well. And so if this was happening, if all of these other countries were converting over by August 6th, 1868, and who knows when he actually wrote this commemoration speech, so clearly this thing has been in the works for a while, for all of these dominoes to fall the way that they have with the metric system, which was only introduced in 1790. So we're really only talking like 80 years or so. The entire world is switching over to this system. How could Alexander Dallas Bache have been so ignorant of this if he was the weights and measures guru that he was? It just doesn't make sense. the way that Gould phrased that to me. Something is off about that. The same way that something is off about, like, going back to the Mervyn Touché trial and his testimony. When Henry Skipwith testifies that Mervyn Touché says that he was too old and frail to pleasure his wife anymore, yet he was only a man in his mid-30s. There's something not right about it. And again, just another example to me of a possible mistake in the staging in our history. All right, so that's what I have for this one, guys. Remember, just because you don't know the truth doesn't mean you can't have fun with the lies, right? And so until the next one, cheers, guys.